Hello, welcome to What the Flick. I'm Alonso Duralde. This is Christy, Lemire. This is Matt Atchity. Perhaps you've heard of them.
I'm still alive.
Yay!
Oh, I'm still alive.
So yeah, there's been some things happening this week regarding The Dark Knight Rises, regarding Rotten Tomatoes, regarding Christy's review, regarding internet commenters being assholes, and it all boils down to this. Everybody calm the fuck down.
Right. Thank you.
Matt, what's this movie about?
This little tiny indie charmer.
This is a movie seemingly made to incite fanboy rage. No,
take a look.
Actually, this is the third Batman movie from Christopher Nolan. Batman has been, and Bruce Wayne have been basically in seclusion in the 8 years since Harvey Dent has died. Harvey Dent, the legacy left behind by his death was the Dent Act, which was a super hardcore Patriot Act type law that took down organized crime. There is no organized crime in Gotham, and things seem relatively peaceful, and then things, as usual, start to go wrong, because otherwise there'd be no movie. Let's take a look.
You don't owe these people anymore. You've given them everything.
Not everything. Not yet.
Did we all like The Dark Knight, first of all? Do we like the predecessors? I think that kind of matters somewhat.
Yes, definitely.
Yes.
And
did you?
Yes, very much.
Okay.
I love Dark Knight.
Okay.
And I think, and somebody pointed out that second movies and trilogies have it easier because they don't have to introduce the character and they don't have to wrap things up. So they just get to be all delicious cream filling.
I mean,
you know,
Empire Strikes Back is really good.
Right, exactly.
And Godfather 2 is really good.
Yeah.
Right,
Those movies suck. I hate those movies.
Well, I don't think Godfather 2
I'm going to be the first negative review for
How do you have a job?
Actually, no, that Vincent can be first negative review.
Oh, there you go.
Please don't threaten
You
Vincent
can't wake up
Cameron.
early enough.
Please.
Godfather 2 didn't know it was in the middle of a trilogy at
Right.
the time, though. So that's, I don't know if we count that. But anyway, yeah. So I think, Dark Knight definitely had the benefit of not having to explain who Batman was and not having to sort of tie things up in a bow at the end. So, but even given that, I have to say, as much as I like this movie, you and I really agree on this a lot, even though I liked it more than you did. But I think we had the same idea in terms of when you come off like Nolan of just having done The Dark Knight and Inception.
Right.
Expectations are raised. People are thinking that, well, now what do you got?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, in my review on The Wrap, I basically said this movie is merely great, which sounds ridiculous, but it is not the game changer that his previous two films were. And that's, I guess at some point you can't maintain that kind of pace. But even given that, I think that for the most part, this thing works.
But nothing exists in a vacuum, so it's impossible not to compare it to Dark Knight and also to Inception, because Inception was so completely great. Go ahead, I'm sorry. Yes.
Well, I kind of see, I understand the criticism, and I understand where you're coming from. I, for the most part, really like this movie, but I felt like, and I'm going to steal the word that everyone else has been saying, it is kind of bloated. Like, it's this really big, it's kind of too big. I think like it's
too many
bigger,
characters.
One of the things that, for a movie that's wrapping up a story, they spent a lot more time still setting things up than I think they really needed to go into.
Lots of expository dialogue, a lot of flashbacks explaining
and again, I don't think it's really boring. I don't think it necessarily. I don't think it's necessarily a terrible problem with the movie. Like, it's all watchable. None of it is like, come on, let's get this going.
I
right?
was doing that.
There's a little
I
of that.
feel bad. I was at least interested in the characters, but I felt like one thing this movie is not is tight and fast.
It has fast moments.
It has fast moments.
And then it drags. The pacing is very erratic.
And at the end, the last third of the movie, like once things get ramped up, then it's great, right? But it.
I'd say the first third is great.
It's funny because I dug out my Dark Knight review, and even that movie, I think I said the last half hour kind of goes a bit in fits and starts when they really need to be getting to the.
Who needs a fourth act, right?
But nonetheless, given all that stuff, though, I mean, for me, this movie was really satisfying. I mean, the further away from it I get, the more I notice little things that were kind of annoying. Like, for example, the Hans Zimmer score. It's like
it's pretty insistent.
It's like you thought, wow, everybody loved Mwah, so I got to up it from there. So there's a lot of going on.
And the wah is often
Do that again.
But you know what though? The wah makes the dialogue unintelligible quite frequently. I don't know whether it's just the sound mix in general or the screening I went to, but between Bane in the mask and Bruce Wayne when he's Batman, husky mumbling to himself, and then the Hans Zimmer score smothers everything.
The husky Batman voice in the line to himself was a little much.
The what?
Like
Look, the mask is on. That's how he talks.
No, but that's I won't ruin what the line is. But there's a moment where Batman's talking to himself, and he's talking to himself in the Batman voice. Like,
great character.
That's a bit much.
He's in a speed metal band. I really like Joseph Gordon-Levitt. He took a role that could have been just sort of like upstanding cop and really made that interesting and gave it a lot of layers, I thought.
I always like him. I think there could have been more to him than just earnestness.
I think Michael Caine was really good in this.
Yeah,
I
he
think
is.
that
He's the best part of this.
there's that one scene between Michael Caine and Christian Bale that actually I found to be the most emotionally moving thing that I think has actually shown up in any Christopher Nolan movie.
Yeah.
I found myself really moved by that. You know, unfortunately, like you have to sit through 8 hours of Batman to get to that moment, right?
But it's there.
But it's
waiting
there.
for you.
It's like
The big surprise for me was how much I liked Anne Hathaway, because I
really
thought
good.
I thought she was not gonna. I didn't think that character was gonna fit in the Nolan Batman world, and it totally works.
Because they don't camp it up.
No, not at all.
It's not Michelle Pfeiffer.
Very
it's not
straightforward,
Halle
and
Berry.
she is dangerous, but she is also very sleek and sexy, and like, you know, she's kind of like Audrey Hepburn and Irma Vep put together, you know, like, because she totally can glam it up, but at the same time, you know, when she's in prison, like the men are afraid of her.
And this movie needs that because it needs some kind of fun, some kind of sexiness,
Levity,
some kind of
because
verve.
otherwise there's no fun
dreary.
in it. Like,
it's just so freaking dreary.
That's one of the things that I kind of have a problem with is that we're watching this movie and it's really grim. And it's, you know, and I get what Nolan's trying to do. I understand that, but to me, kind of the disconnect is that this is Batman, and Batman kind of is inherently silly. And as much as we set up that this is a serious thing, a serious character, right? Like, it's still a guy who dresses like a bat.
I didn't mind. I mean, true.
The bat with a cool suit that, like, you know, deflects bullets, but it's supple.
But he's still got pointy ears.
I was okay with the darker stuff. I mean, because, you know, obviously from the first movie, when if he's pursuing like the Ra's al Ghul stuff with Batman and not like, say, the Penguin, you know, then obviously we're getting a grimmer thing, and I was okay with that. I did like that Anne Hathaway was there to sort of leaven it a bit and, you know, give a little sex and a little fun. My big beef with this movie, I mean, otherwise I really enjoyed it, and I think it's very effective, and it's a nice capper to this thing. And Dave said, like, altogether, this is like a great 7.5-hour opera.
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree with
that.
But
my beef is, like, for all the stuff that Nolan does that is outside of the box and that breaks the rules, there is some stuff here where he really kind of telegraphs what's coming up. That in that sort of screenwriter 101 way that just drives me up the wall, where like something gets mentioned in Act 1, so you know to look for it later, you know. Yeah. And the fact that so much of the third act, this isn't a spoiler, I don't think, involves a bomb with a flashing red LED display. Like, come on!
What do you mean cut the blue wire? They're all blue wires!
I will say, and this is a thing that I'm going to nitpick a little bit about, you know, in the first movie, in Batman Begins, you know, as much as Gotham is kind of an amalgam of a lot of cities, and you know, there's elements of Chicago and New York and Toronto.
It's like Babe, Pig in the City.
You know, exactly. You know, in Batman Begins, Gotham is very much its own city. It doesn't look like anything else. And then in Dark Knight, we're in Chicago.
Right.
And this one, like, hey, we're in New York.
This is Manhattan. Yeah.
Like, it's Manhattan.
Yeah, the one big chase begins outside Wall Street and ends outside the Bonaventure here in Los Angeles.
Yeah, well,
they made a big cross-country trip.
That is Gotham. It is, you know.
And they play football in Pittsburgh. You're fun at Roethlisberger. My problem, which the world knows if you've seen my review, whatever. It's.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I know nothing.
Did you review it?
I might have seen a movie this weekend. It's in fits and starts. Its pacing is really choppy. It is totally overlong and explains way too much, and yet makes these giant emotional leaps with its characters. Like the romance that is set up for Bruce Wayne comes out of nowhere and makes absolutely no sense. We're expected to accept that. Things like that where it's very erratic. That bothered me. It is overlong. It is overly dreary. It is overly self-serious. But it looks fantastic. It's all the impeccable production values you expect from a Nolan film.
Wally
Pfister. His whole team is back from Inception and from Dark Knight. From a production design standpoint, it's beautiful. It's got almost a grittier look to it than Dark Knight had, which was very glossy and metallic and kind of sheeny. It's
Michael
just,
Sheeney?
Very similar, but
Martin.
it's a
Charlie
freaking drag. It's self-important, and it's a letdown. And I'm sorry, we have to discuss it in comparison to the films that came before. It does not exist on its own.
It does, because it refers back to those earlier films, and it definitely lives in that world. And I think that on its own, this would be a very hard movie to kind of come into. I think it would be very difficult.
Also, because before I forget, because it will leave my pea brain if I don't say it quickly, you really recognize the absence of Heath Ledger here. And how much he really brought to that, and had the unpredictability that he brought, and the personality and the verve. I mean, I love Tom Hardy so much, and he's so versatile. He can do anything. He is massively wasted in this.
Oh, see, I liked him in this. I will admit, I was afraid of Bane in this movie. Now, I will say, when he first shows up and starts talking, I thought, is he doing Sean Connery?
What makes you think that?
Exactly.
I'll take shores for 1,000.
But of course you are.
I like Tom Hardy a lot. I kind of feel he's a little wasted here, because he has a very imposing physicality, but because you can't see most of his face, and I was doing this every time he spoke because the voice is a little hard to hear through the thing. It felt like you could put almost any really muscular dude in that role.
Well, and I couldn't believe Bane spent the whole movie taking orders from Poison Ivy.
That's the other one.
Sorry.
Which, by the way, thank you for bringing that up, because the Bane is not named for Bane Capital, Rush Limbaugh, you moron.
No, actually, this movie is, it's funny, because you hear that report about Limbaugh, it's like, did you see the movie? Because this is actually conservative fantasy. Right? Bane and his cronies are Occupy Wall Street.
They want it both ways, though.
The movie, I said in my review, this movie kind of, either side can find little things to sort of run with. Like, for the right, definitely, they make Occupy Wall Street look like thugs. They portray, sort of, once things go bad in Gotham City, it's like every sort of anti-Soviet propaganda film you've ever seen. I think this is an aggressively non-political film, but it flirts with political theater on both sides. If you feel like taking that away from it, but ultimately, I don't think this movie has a point of view necessarily in that.
But it wants to be relevant in that regard, in that you have terrorism, you have identity theft, you have economic collapse, you have things that have been happening now. At one point, it is the island of Manhattan gets cut off from the outside world.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's relevant to things that have happened in the last decade or so. But doesn't take a stand on any of them. You're right.
Yeah, no, this is the post 9/11 Batman, but not so much that it wants to offend anybody,
Well, you were going to say something. There was a thought in your head. Is it gone?
The Omar Sharif movie.
Dr. Zhivago. Yes,
thank
that
you.
too.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, I thought about that one.
Yes,
too.
I thought it was,
all the people huddled together in the room with the fire going.
I expected somebody to come in and say, 3 families could have lived in this house.
So does this break every known box office record?
No, actually, it's PG-13. You can't take kids to it, so it won't. I think that.
What was the Avengers?
I think the Avengers is going to be the #1 movie of the summer.
Yeah.
Avengers is something that you can take younger fans. I mean, I honestly, I'm not taking Gabe to this. Gabe hasn't seen the rest of these movies. And
it's just too freaking long. He'll fall asleep.
Well, that's the other thing. It's too long. But I think that there are too many grown-up themes that a kid's going to really enjoy. There's not enough bat action.
They do very shrewdly. Again, I don't think this is a spoiler, but take it for what you will. I think that Nolan guides things here so that we can have an eventual Justice League movie where Batman doesn't look ridiculous standing next to Superman. I don't think the Batman of the Christian Bale Batman of the last 2 movies.
Any more inherently than 2 guys in a cape would.
Well, right, but you know what I'm saying. The Nolan Bale Batman in the rest of the DC universe would not work at all. But he guides things in a way that it would, and that's all I'll say.
So pick that apart in any way you see fit. Okay, so we do numbers. What do you think?
Sure.
Matt Atchity.
7.
7.8.
I'm giving it a 5. It's solidly mixed.
I'm going to say, do not question Christy's breeding just because she gave it a 5.
She's a smart lady.
When you do that kind of stuff, we all know this, you sound like a dipshit.
I might be a horny, frustrated housewife, though. That might play into my thinking sometimes.
Just because you've been sick.
Sometimes. That could be it. It's possible that, I'm just frustrated in general, and it's clouding my thinking.
Listen, Fat Beardo 1 and Fat Beardo 2, we still love you.
Thank you so much. I need that. All right, so our average is 6.6. It is in the mid-80s somewhere.
Mid-80s, yeah.
And it was...
Yeah, but if people keep horsing around about this, I'm going to knock it down to 0. So.
And the world will not end if it doesn't get 100 people. Relax.
Matt has the power. He will do it.
Exactly.
All right, have fun.
I'll turn this whole movie right around.
Have fun. Enjoy. Bye.
Bye.